Coming up in this episode of the KickCast, it's actually a special episode. I get to sit down and talk with Steve from GameLaunched.com, and we talk about GameLaunchedcom and, a little bit about the future of crowdfunding and little tips and hints in that. So sit back and relax. It's time for the KickCast. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the KickCast, the podcast about crowdfunding projects out there. I'm super excited for this episode today, actually, as normally you'd see me kind of reviewing a couple crowdfunding projects, but today it's going to be a special episode where we actually get Steve from GameLaunched.com. If you guys watched the last episode, you remember me mentioning one of their projects. I think it was Orphan on there, and that I haven't even played the game and watched the video, and it gave me goosebumps right there. So Steve kindly agreed to come and kind of talk a little bit about Game Launch. So let me introduce him right now. So Steve, welcome to the show, and I'm super excited to see you here. And so let's just start off and tell people a little bit about what Game Launched is.
So we actually came up with the idea of Game Launched about 7 months ago, and the idea was we wanted to create a crowdfunding platform that was different than your traditional Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and with a pure exclusive focus on gaming. And so we wanted to take it, several steps further. And one of those thoughts was to not only try to be this only US based crowdfunding site exclusive for gaming, but to also offer crowdfunding to international campaigns around the world. So we started this process in the beginning of September, and we then launched on 12/12 with sort of a soft launch, and then basically we're open for submissions on the first of the year, and then had our official launch, which was on March 21st.
That sounds pretty sweet. So if you guys probably just heard that ding over there, that is actually Game Launched other co-founder right there, Kevin. Can you hear us? Okay, maybe maybe not, but at least he's in the Hangout now. So Kevin, if you can somehow hear us, we can't see or hear you. So yeah, if you can figure that out, we'll bring you in right there. Okay. So Steve, the one interesting thing about Game Launch that I found different from such as Kickstarter and Indiegogo is that you have this group of people called the Launch Crew. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about who these people are and why you actually have a launch crew?
Yeah, so back in the early stages of putting together Game Launched, I was a big fan of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and one of the things that I felt that it lacked was having having support from developers, from writers and really gaming industry people, experts. So what I wanted to do was put together a panel of people that actually volunteer their time, that would essentially act as mentors to projects, maybe offer them some advice, a write-up, suggestions, maybe open a door or two for people. So that was the idea behind the launch crew. We really wanted to create a group of people that would not only just be a panel, but to interact. And that further interaction is actually going to be taking place as we've got another big project that we're sort of getting ready to unveil to GameLaunched.com. So we don't have an exact date on that, but the launch crew will certainly be much more accessible to the registered users, and as well as obviously to the campaign. So their initial, our goal was to have them as we get more and more game submissions, they're going to select featured projects every month that'll be featured on the homepage. And then again, they'll just offer some advice or anything that they can do. So we literally took a stab in almost like throwing a dart and hoping that we would grab a few people, here and there from around the country, and some people that bowed out or were unfortunately not able to, because of maybe who they were affiliated with, were kindly enough to pass us along to other colleagues or other gaming personalities or writers that they knew, and so that quickly, the numbers started to pile in. So we've been extremely excited to have these, people volunteering their time, certainly helping us get the word out, and obviously, have offered up a number of write-ups for us already. So their connections have been extremely valuable to us.
Yeah, that's why I actually love this idea of the launch crew, because one thing that I find when I talk to a lot of project creators is you have these two camps. You have this one camp where you kind of go like, "Oh, this crowdfunding thing sounds like an awesome idea. I want to try and do it." And then they're talking about it. It's like, "Oh yeah, I just need to make a video, right? Make it a little cheesy or make it some kind of entertaining and then put it up and people will come." And I just looked at them like, "You have no idea what you're getting into, do you?" On there, and we've seen this a lot with a lot of crowdfunding projects as of late. Is they'll have this great idea and they'll go way beyond their goal. They have this whole area right here, and a lot of people don't think about what do you do right after you actually have your projects funded is this distribution method. And I've seen so many like companies or individuals go like, holy crap, how am I going to fulfill like 3,000 different orders when I was only expecting 200 people to ever even back this project right there. um, and that's why I love the launch crew. That way it's kind of a lot of these people have experience in different fields, and you can kind of bring them in and ask for it like, hey, I have no idea how I'm going to get these t-shirts fulfilled or anything. Do you have any advice on how I can get this working, or do you know anybody who could help me out in this kind of field right there? And so what's the process that somebody needs to go through if they need help from the launch crew?
So basically, right now, as the current sort of site is set up, we are actually kind of working very quickly to allow the launch crew to sort of come in and leave comments or endorsements on individual campaigns. And so when that sort of comments and section is completely tied in with the launch crew, then they can sort of, ask for advice, or, maybe if they want to privately ask them a question, or just do it right on Game Launch. So they'll be able to do that as well. One of the things that we've met as kind of a group, or at least I talked with our main developer, James Dvorak, is that we're going to really try to include the launch crew to offer up some blogging advice or some different posts that they want to put in under the launch crew page, which I think will be great. At least they can share different tips or articles. If they want to do a video on some segment of gaming, or whatever they have time for. So that can really become a tool to really help assist, especially the indie developers.
So especially with crowdfunding and especially with indie developers now, we've kind of seen a huge explosion in the past couple of years. I'd say probably starting off with Minecraft, which kind of exploded, and now you're seeing more and more indie developers getting exposed. You hear more about these indie games that are coming out and everything. So this is kind of like a little bit off topic questions. Like, where do you see the future of actually gaming itself? We hear like a lot of news about these large companies closing down, studios closing down everywhere, but we're still hearing a huge thriving community of indie developers. So we're like, I'd say in about 5 to 10 years, where do you see the world of gaming?
Well, it's interesting. I've talked to a number of game developers, going through this process. One of which is a big developer who's worked for a large company, or several large developing companies. Um, and we kind of spoke about what together what we thought the future was. From Game Launch's perspective, I think one of the things that's really cool is that we have this international reach, and so there's a ton of so-called indie developers that are out there around the world that don't have platforms to launch on. So they're sort of just kind of stuck, unless they want to go on Indiegogo. But specific to gaming, I think that's where we're going to get our biggest traffic from as far as game submissions. As far as the industry in whole, I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen. I think, obviously the industry we see is obviously changing through, whether Microsoft decides to put a halt on these on the game trading industry and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, developers, the cost of developing a game, whether you're a medium or a triple A, I mean, it's expensive. So, whether they can get that money out of there, out of selling the game, and become profitable is certainly a concern. I think from the indie developer, if they can, crowdfund and not have to either give up equity or they don't have to give a huge, chunk away from, each person that has a hand in it. It certainly makes sense to do the crowdfunding. So I see it as a positive. I'm hoping, I think it's going to continue. And I think there's, even in Vermont right now, there's an initiative to really try to get a lot of indie game studios up and running, to just keep going, keep educating people on game development, and sort of keep this alive.
Okay, so speaking of developers, so let's say I'm a developer. I'm actually watching this episode of KickCast. I'm like, game launch sounds really interesting. Can you kind of walk us through how the experience through game launch would be, starting from your initial conception all the way to delivering a fully built game out to the people?
So, as far as developing, or as far as like submitting a project, you mean as far as or why to go to Game Launch? So,
Yeah, from like so for starting from like I'm going to submit this project through like getting fully funded, and then how because you guys also mentioned that you kind of help distribute the game too. So how that whole entire process works throughout everything.
yeah, so what we're doing right now is we're trying to we're obviously gonna, once we have games that are fully funded, um, within our site we have a marketplace. So right now, currently on our marketplace, you basically just see some game launched gear for sale. That's going to turn into a much bigger site as games are funded and then obviously developed. Um, we really wanted to sort of, not necessarily make it a one-stop shop, but we really wanted to offer, especially the small developers, the indie developers, a chance for people or fans that went and backed their game, to come back and say, "Hey, oh, this is where this game is at," and whether that's a direct link, or we work with a company for direct downloads. We certainly are considering that. We've actually have talked to a few. So the future could be that we have direct downloads, but I think more importantly, just giving people a place, to get a game, um, initially funded and then have a platform that they can have it sold on, or at least a link to, I think is extremely valuable.
That sounds like awesome. So what I actually noticed on your site is you're not just so far our discussion right now has kind of been primarily around video games on there, but on your site you mentioned almost board games, even like I think I saw a project on there for cardboard game pieces on there. So what kind of gave you the idea to, let's not just focus on video games, let's focus on games in general?
Yeah, so I mean that was our initial concept was, anything and everything gaming, from hardware, accessories, dice, board. I mean, that really, we just wanted to you know come up with every type of game genre that is out there, and say, hey, why not? We're a crowdfunding site for games. So if it falls within that category, why not? Let's put it on our platform. So I think the more submissions that we get that come in that are really interesting or different, um, the better it's going to look for Game Launched.
Yeah, it's actually surprising. Like I didn't know there was this like huge group of people who are like really into board games out there at all. Because when I grew up, it's like, well, there's like Monopoly and Sorry and all those classic ones, but now you hear about all these different ones, like Warhammer, or like I know I've backed a couple of board game projects
Mm-hmm.
before, and it's crazy because you tell them, oh, I have this board game, and like, oh, let's come on, bring it out, let's kind of play with it, and it's really amazing. And that's why I part of the reason that when I look through your site, I'm like, I love this idea because you're not really excluding anybody out there. And in my case, I'm a little biased on this, but you're not going to be another crowdfunding site where it's full of iPhone cases and wallets on there. um,
Right.
that is that's a little bit of bias on there, but so kind of, I want to know a little bit more about your kind of backgrounds. Like, how did you actually discover crowdfunding in the beginning?
So Kevin Bailey, who is my one of our co-founders, and is also a business partner of mine with another project that we were working on a year and a half ago. Um, Kevin actually built and pretty much single-handedly put together a game himself, and put it on Kickstarter. And so I got involved in the very late stages. I mean, just from the crowdfunding point of view, to give him a hand. And so we've both have been in the tech, very passionate about technology, mobile apps. And so Kevin had this game, and he decided to throw it up on Kickstarter. Um, we didn't meet our goal, so we decided, well, why not? Let's try Indiegogo. And so we raised some money, but initially we just there were so many things about Kickstarter, and obviously you can't shoot them in the foot. I mean, they're obviously the leader of this industry. So with that said, they're doing something right. They certainly generate a ton of traffic, but we didn't want to come up with a site to just say, hey, we're another Kickstarter. We saw a lot of things within the site when we were crowdfunding ourselves. We saw a lot of things on Indiegogo that we thought could be fixed, could be better, could be different. And not certainly trying to say, okay, all these things didn't work for us, so they've got to work for everybody if they go on GameLaunched. But realizing that crowdfunding is such a difficult thing to do, like we were discussing before this, is that it's a full time job for people. You have to put a tremendous amount of work in it. But we also thought within that there were a lot of things that Kickstarter and Indiegogo didn't offer, like the launch crew, having a gamification set up, a marketplace. So, we wanted to be able to create a platform that makes it much easier for users to come in there and find games and not have to go through pages of pages. So we're actually going to be, releasing another piece to that once we have more games in our site. So we looked at all these different things and said, geez, you know what? What if what if we take a stab at this? Um, we were very fortunate enough to have a friend of ours, James Dvorak, who's a very talented developer. And it took me a little while to convince him. He, to this day, still kind of jokes about it that he thought we were crazy. And we pulled in another developer and said, okay, let's see if we can pull this off. And Kevin and I, run the marketing, PR, the business side of it, and the developers, of course, are constantly building and working on the site. So, um, we're fortunate enough that we're going to have some college interns working with us very shortly. Um, I think primarily any of the money that we put into this, we're obviously hoping to get back, but you know you can build a website these days very inexpensively, and I think the great thing is that the site's functioning. um, we're getting great traffic. We just sent a press release today that our user registration has tripled in 3 weeks. um, it doesn't reflect obviously in our backers and game submissions, but we still have a lot of games that I think are going to be releasing shortly. So those are all really positive things. And with that being said, I think if you've got a site that's very, affordable, we have, four dedicated people working on this. I think the upside is huge. It's not like we have venture capitalists or, we're mortgaging our houses to keep this running. So I think it can go, has nowhere to go but up.
Oh, I love it, and I love the idea of getting like college interns and stuff. That I mean, that's got to be one of the greatest things ever. Like one of my best experiences in life so far is being able to kind of work in a startup environment and see it grow from there. So I that's awesome. Like the next time you see those college interns, tell them you are lucky and this is going to be like a wild ride, to
Yeah.
see things go. And like I think you guys are going to grow because it's an awesome idea. And you guys offer a lot of things where other people are like, where do I go to have a question answered that I have like this? Um, but that being said, you mentioned that you've kind of done a couple crowdfunding projects on there. Do you have any advice for anybody who's considering doing a crowdfunding project or is doing a crowdfunding project right now that you learned from this whole experience on, you know, that you could pass along just to them and help them out too?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and we even talked, specifically to our own campaigns. Kevin, um, has been just a huge resource and a partner because he works directly with the games, which is great. I mean, you don't really see that level of support from a larger crowdfunding site. Now, granted, can that continue? Can we sustain that? We hope so. But we've had a lot of discussions with the developers that have put games up and really given them a lot of advice and ideas of what they need to be doing to be successful. And unfortunately, if they choose to use that or not use it, that's up to them. But I think the biggest thing we've learned is that you have to have an audience. You have to have a base of fans. You have to have social media really dialed in before you go live. All the statistics show out there that you need you need probably 20% of your funds to come from family and friends. So, if you really look at this as running a business for 30 days, but really looking at it running it for 40 to 45 days and really prepping your fans and your social base a couple weeks ahead of time, I think the success is going to be so much higher. So, my advice to anybody launching a game on GameLaunched is, we have resources that are going to be able to help you. We have mentors that can help you, but you've got to be willing to put the time in and really grind it out for 30 days and see what happens. So
Oh, I think that's great, great advice. I mean, because how many times have you heard the horror stories of people who've gone through crowdfunding projects and are like, I didn't sleep for any of that 30 days right there. It's all just, I'm just thinking about it on constantly on there.
right.
And I'd have to say it's true, and then, I have kind of one last question, and this is kind of in just crowdfunding in general. Um, a lot of skeptics about crowdfunding are like, "Oh, this is just going to be a fad. It's not going to last." I'm just really waiting. They're like, I'm waiting for that one project, one big project that's going to be so successful and under deliver extravagantly that's going to kind of kill crowdfunding in general. Like, how do you feel about the future of crowdfunding? Personally, I think it's going to grow. It's here to stay and not go anywhere. That's why I do this show right here. But
Right.
like, where do you see the future in crowdfunding? Is it going to replace the traditional way of doing things, or is it going to be almost an alternative route that people can take?
Well, I certainly think with the Job Act getting passed, and when they decide to really fully implement it, I'm sure you're going to see a number of sites come up right away, and obviously offering the crowdfunding for equity. Um, I don't really think personally. I mean, my personal belief is that I don't really think it's going to have a place in the gaming industry. I could be completely wrong, but I think from speaking to developers that you know they bust their tail developing a game, and certainly crowdfunding is a route to get funds. But to crowdfund for equity is sort of like, well, I'm giving up this piece of the pie, and that pie is already split enough ways. Um, Through their team, through publishers, so on and so forth. So I'm curious to see how that's going to, react, and what will, how people will react to it as a crowdfunding for equity. I think crowdfunding itself is going to probably just continue to grow. We're hoping, um, as I've always said to people in interviews, there's Kickstarter and there's Indiegogo, which are the two biggest, and certainly there's many other sites out there, but there's definitely room for a third, and I'm curious to see if you know as Game Launch continues to be successful, will other sites start to specialize like we did with gaming, and just go into certain um, platforms that they want to focus on. So I think it's going to be around for a while. I certainly think there is that fear of what happens if project gets funded, they don't deliver. Obviously we've seen that a few times already where there's been some threats of legal action and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's a little scary. But I think the best thing we can do is provide, the best format, the best platform in crowdfunding for games, and having it, U.S. based and offering it international. Um, Again, I think the upside is tremendous. We just need a lot of people to flood on over to GameLaunchedcom and sign up and start experiencing it.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested, well, like Steve said, head on over to GameLaunched.com. It's free to sign up, um, and there are actually already some really cool projects out there. Like I said, I love this whole idea of helping these developers because they're game developers. It's like we know how to make games. We don't like running a crowdfunding site or trying to do a crowdfunding project is probably entirely different from what their focus is. So I love it where you guys can give them a little bit more focus. They can focus on the game a little bit more, and you guys can help them along the way in those other areas. So GameLaunch.com. Steve, I want to say thank you for taking your time. I know you're on the East Coast, so it's probably getting like pretty late for you over there. So like I appreciate you staying up. Let Kevin know. I appreciate him at least trying to get on this hangout,
Yeah.
but that's like with anything. I guess that's how the dice roll to go with our gaming theme on there. Um, so yeah, again, thank you so much, and everybody at home. That's all I have right now. Other than make sure you guys check out Game Launched. Also, if you like interviews like this and want to hear more of them, let me know. I'll try to reach out and try to get more interviews like this. You can email me at kickcast@ktdata.net, or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ktdata or facebook.com/KickCast. Wrong show. Almost said the wrong show. Or you can find us on Twitter at KickCast, Google Plus at plus.kickcast.net. We also do this show live every 2 weeks. So our next episode is April 30th, and you'll be able to find us at live.kickcast.net. I know some of you guys are watching live right now probably noticed that kickcast.net isn't working, and that's because the domain registrars, DNS servers are kind of getting DDoSed right now. So hopefully that will be back, or I'll figure something out and all that. So thank you, all of you guys who are watching at home. I love it. I appreciate it. I always am amazed that you guys want to hear what I have to say and all the different guests that we bring on and the different projects. So I appreciate that, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.